Hello, welcome to the Courageous Self-Care podcast. I'm your host, Christina Marlette. On this show, we talk about self-care that goes beyond bubble baths, chocolate, and wine. The reason I like to say that is because over the last few years, I've been seeing how people connect with the idea of self-care. And for a lot of people, it starts with external self-care practices. And there's nothing wrong with doing external self-care. It's all very important. It's important to take care of our bodies through nutrition and exercise and going to the spa if that's what you like to do, getting out in nature. Those are all fantastic practices. And at the same time, if we're only focusing on the external, we're missing out on the whole other side, which is internal self-care. And that is what really lights me up. Internal self-care is things like growing your gratitude practice, learning how to forgive both yourself and others, shifting your relationship with time. These are some of the foundations of courageous self-care, and each month we focus on one of those here on the podcast. The other thing I love to do is interview experts in fields that we may or may not consider to be self-care, but they tend to fit, because self-care, one of my missions is to expand our awareness of what self-care actually is. And so today I have a guide with me. I have Zaheen Nanji. Welcome to the show, Zaheen.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're up to.
Well, I am just a normal gal from Wetaskiwin, Alberta, in Canada. And my husband and I own a wellness center called Shanti Wellness Center, where we transform and heal lives. As well, I'm a speaker, and I speak on the area of resilience.
Well, that sounds very interesting. I'm excited to get more into that. But first, why don't you share with us your current favorite self-care practice?
Honestly, this took a while for me to get, so I completely understand, but I say it's being selfish. Mm-hmm. Self-care is being selfish, but not in a bad way, in a way that you can say no.
Yes.
Setting boundaries. And I learned that the hard way.
Oh, me too. Yeah, I think as women, we are kind of programmed into saying, yes, I'll do this for you. Yes, I'll do that for you. Of course I can do that. Who, me? I don't matter. I'll just keep on doing and giving and pouring everything out until we realize, oh my gosh, I have no energy left. And often that shows up as a health crisis or some sort of chaos where we are forced to reflect and make some new choices. So is there something major that happened for you? You said that you learned it the hard way.
Yeah. Well, I think, just as women, we like to please people. And we're just like that, right? Like we're the nurturers. And it was early on in my marriage where I felt, no, I have to please everyone so that they can like me. But it kind of got to a point where, I felt that just because I'm there, that doesn't mean I can do everything. And I learned how to say no, but I myself was the kind of person who likes to take on and show that, hey, I can do it too, and I'm kind of perfect. So I also had the perfection syndrome, or whatever you want to call it.
Yes.
In 2016, I was actually diagnosed with cancer in my right breast. And that's when I finally said, okay, you know what? No means no. I have to set boundaries. I used to see clients in the evening as well. And that's when I told my husband, no, I can teach fitness classes in the evenings because I gave up exercise altogether for so many years. Mm. And I said, I really want to feel good about myself. And exercise helps my mental health. It makes me feel good. Not just, body image is not. It's just that mental, peace.
Right.
Yeah. And so I stopped seeing clients in the evenings and I just, focus on me. And there are different ways of saying no. We don't have to come out being rude and saying, no, I'm not going to do it. Go find someone else. No. I mean, you can say, I would love to do it, but could we do it another time if that's okay with you? That's another way of saying no.
Absolutely.
thanks for thinking about me, but this is not going to fit in my schedule. Another way to say no, right?
Yeah, there are so many nice ways we can say no. And I remember learning about boundaries at a retreat that I was a participant in. It happened to be on a wonderful beach in Mexico, which is a great place to learn about boundaries. And the facilitator had us draw a circle in the sand around us. And it was the physical representation of a boundary. And then someone would come into our circle and we had to close our eyes and notice what we felt. And I had really been working on connecting with people. That was something that I wasn't feeling a whole lot of. So I drew the circle, but I didn't know we were working on boundaries. And so someone came into my circle and I closed my eyes. I'm like, nope, I feel nothing because I'm connected. I'm so connected with people. I'm getting good at connection. So I'm connected. And then the person had to come closer and closer and closer. And I felt nothing, like zero experience with setting boundaries. And then eventually she told us that the exercise was about boundaries. I'm like, what are those? Clearly I need some work on this because I don't have any. And it was fascinating how once I was awakened to that and became aware of it, it showed up everywhere in my life, how I had no idea how to set boundaries. And I was a yes machine and people-pleasing factory. And I can also identify with that perfectionistic tendency. And one thing that really helped change, and I'll share a resource with you listeners, is a book called The Power of the Positive No. And what that book taught me is that whenever we say no to someone else, we're also saying yes to ourselves. And our yeses need to be really important and valued. So for instance, I think this is an example from the book. If you're saying no to cooking for the bake sale or baking for the bake sale because you have a yoga class scheduled, you're saying a big yes to yourself to take that yoga class. And it's a no at this time because I have this other thing already scheduled. And so I think that's also what you're saying. Like we can use our calendar, we can use our schedule, and we can use time as a barometer. Like this just simply doesn't fit right now. And so maybe another time. It's not no's are never forever, but they are also, we need to tune into what we're saying yes to for ourselves.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up too, because it's not just saying no to the people around us, like at work, but also in your own family. Being a mother, being a wife, myself, I find it that I had to learn how to ask for help.
Oh my gosh, yes.
That just because, I too work just like you do. That doesn't mean that I come home and work extra. We can do it together as a family, and it'll help us all. And so it's so nice. Now, my husband makes breakfast for me every day, which is nice. And I get to make supper. And then on the weekend is our cooking day where we kind of prep everything for the week. And I like it that we do it together. So it's done faster, and we can spend some time with each other after.
Those are some other really good self-care strategies that you're using in there that are so important. Learning to ask for help, understanding that we're not meant to do it all alone. And when we do, we feel like a martyr. And a martyr is sacrificing herself for the underlying reason of she does not feel powerful and important and good enough on her own, so she has to prove through her actions that she deserves to be here. And I know I have had martyr tendencies for sure in the past, but a good signal for that is if you're feeling bitter that you're always doing this thing, like if you're always picking up after someone, or you are not, if you're feeling resentful, oh, he gets to go out and do this and I have to stay here and do that, it's a sign that you're running on empty and that it's time to use some courage and ask for some help and make some changes.
Yes. Well said.
Thank you. I get to speak about it from experience. So, Zaheen, one of the things the reason I chose to combine courage with self-care is I feel like most self-care, if not all self-care, involves moving through fear, taking that time to prioritize our own well-being can be really scary. We can have a lot of blocks in the way that are emotional, that are mental, that are even physical. We can come up with all sorts of reasons why we don't actually need to take care of ourselves. And courage is the value and the character trait that helps us move through that fear. And the reason I like to have my guests share stories of courage, which you're going to do in a moment, is because, as Brene Brown said so eloquently and simply, courage is contagious. When we hear someone else's story of courage, it not only gives us more ideas, it brings that energy of courage from way outside of us, because a lot of people, especially women, think that they aren't courageous. It brings it closer and closer and closer until it's actually embodied within us, and we can even borrow other people's energy of courage. Like, oh, that woman did that thing and she could do it. So if she could do it, I could probably do it here too. And so that's why I'm very much looking forward to hearing your story of courage.
Well, thanks for asking that. So when I was 5 years old, something happened that caused a speech impediment. I started stuttering. And you may not notice it now because it took me a long time to overcome it. Mm-hmm. And I was in Kenya at that time. That's where I'm from. And I learned how to hide it because I was kind of familiar with my surroundings. Everything seemed fine. And then when I came to Canada at the age of 15 without my parents, that was another fear that I had to overcome. But my stutter got worse because new environment, I had to learn everything on my own. I had to ask for things on my own. And it was very tough. Went through high school, and the teachers knew that I stuttered and they tried to get me help. But as a teenager, you don't want to be kind of picked out of the class, right? Yeah. So I kind of went through just kind of ignoring it. And then finally university came and I couldn't hide any longer. It was affecting my work. And finally I thought, okay, I need to get some help. So I did go for therapy, speech therapy, and it was all fine and dandy. I learned the skills in 3 weeks and they were like, okay, now go out and practice the skills and come back in 2 weeks and we'll see how it goes. Well, just like a lot of people, when we learn things, say at conferences or when we see a coach and they say, make sure you do this for the week and you don't, what happens? Nothing happens. Right? You stay.
Yes.
Well, the same thing happened to me. I stayed where I was. I kept on doing the same things over and over again. I would avoid, I would feel fear. I mean, if you have seen the King's Speech, the movie, he has so much fear just talking. And that's exactly how I felt. I couldn't answer the phone. I couldn't go through a drive-thru and ask for a coffee because I would stutter on the word coffee. And I went back to my speech therapist and she asked, so how's it going? I'm like, I don't think it worked. And she looks at me and she says, well, did you practice the fluency skills that we gave you? And I said, no. And she goes, did you go out and even do anything? And I said, no. And she said something so important that just shifted my whole mindset. And she said, you've got two choices. The first choice is to stay where you are and do what you're doing and live with it. Or the second thing is to take what we've taught you, practice it, and face your fear. Oh, my Lord. Well, I will tell you, it was a nice summer day, and I got out of her office, and I walked away like I was in a trance because I just kept on processing what she said. Yeah. And I don't know what happened that day, but I decided, and that's the word. You make a decision.
Right.
I decided I am going to face my fear. And so from that day on, I did little things to be able to speak more fluently, and look where I am now.
Well, I certainly wouldn't have known if you hadn't have said that you had a stutter. It doesn't show at all. And it really speaks to the effort that is required to overcome fear. But I love how you said it's just a little bit at the time. Like, it's not something that you do in a day. It takes, it doesn't take long to make a decision, but then to implement that decision takes a lot of effort. And that's something I've been noticing recently with a variety of the different books I've been reading, is that there was a great quote in the book, Grit. And it's something along the lines of, we don't want to show people the hours and hours of becoming. We would rather just say, ta-da, look what I've become. It's the highlight reel. But every single story of courage takes grit. It takes overcoming that fear over and over and over again. It doesn't disappear. It's that our courage eventually becomes greater than the fear.
Yeah.
I love that. And what you are talking about really speaks to one of the foundations of courageous self-care that I call taking embodied action. And like you said, if we have a thought in our mind that we want to change something about ourselves and we keep it in our mind, nothing will ever change. So we need to use our bodies to put things into reality, to bring them out of the ideas realm, the metaphysical, and bring them into physical reality. So you were specifically using your mouth and your jaw and the muscles around that, retraining your tongue to take that embodied action to make it happen. And that is a great example of how anything that we want, any dream that we have, we must use some part of our physical bodies to make that happen. And you just gave such a beautiful example of that.
Thank you, Christina.
You're welcome. So now you teach on resilience, yes. And you are, I am assuming, using the life experiences that you've had, some of the ones that you've shared with us, to help your clients overcome challenges and fears.
Yes, that is correct. So I teach them how to embrace change, change their attitude about the way they approach things, and bounce forward in life.
Mm-hmm. What important work. I'm sure that you see tremendous growth in your clients and that it's so fulfilling.
Yes, it is very fulfilling. And just even speaking at conferences has been just a great journey, because there'll be people who come up to me after and say, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yes.
Or thank you so much for saying that one thing, because it just changed my mindset. And it's nice to hear that.
Oh, that's my favorite thing to hear after I've spoken, or from people who are listening to the podcast. My favorite thing is when they say, oh, I never thought of it that way before. I hadn't thought of that before. And that gets me so excited, because just one idea can change your life.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely.
As long as you put it into action.
That's right.
So, Zaheen, if people want to connect with you beyond the podcast, learn about what you do, explore what you have to offer, where can they find you?
I would say to go to my website, zaheennanji.com. So it's just my name. And when they go there, they can get a free download of the 7 Habits of Resilient People. And if they want to know more about the wellness center that we have, then they can go to Shanti Wellness Center, and I can share that link with you.
Beautiful. Well, that is, I deeply encourage you to take some embodied action. Do you work with people online so they can?
Yes, very much.
Yeah. So anyone, anywhere in the world can work with you.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you feel like you have something that is just a big block in your way and you are looking to move forward and embrace change rather than fear it, be sure to go to Zaheen's website, get that free resource that you have generously offered. And the embodied action in this case is typing some letters into your phone or your iPad or your computer and getting that download. I strongly encourage you to do that. If you're feeling like you want to know more, you're feeling your curiosity is piqued, or you're just feeling like it resonates with you. So Zaheen, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I've really enjoyed hearing what you have to say, and I love your story of courage. I think it's so powerful.
Well, thank you so much for having me again, Christina, and I had fun.
Oh, good. So to recap, what is important here is setting boundaries, saying maybe no to others and yes to yourself, knowing that you don't need to do everything by yourself, learning the great skill of asking for help, and remembering that perfectionism is overrated. And then knowing that there is support for you if you are seeking to make a change, if you feel stuck. if you continue to try to do it by yourself, you will more than likely stay stuck. It's so important. It requires so much courage to reach out and to say to someone, I need your help. And the people who we want to ask for help from are people who are a few steps down the path from us. They've walked the journey. They've learned some things. They're able to collapse time for us so we don't have to go through the same hardships that they did. And that's what you are offering, Zaheen. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. I am so glad that you took time to tune into the podcast today. This is a form of courageous self-care. And you have so many other options of what you could be listening to. A good chunk of it is going to bring you down, but you chose to listen to something that is lifting up your vibration and giving you ideas on how to practice courageous self-care. So gold star for you. And if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and give it a like on whatever platform you're listening to it on. You could share it with a friend. You could leave a comment. We love to read those. And it's available. This podcast is available on iTunes, Spotify, and iHeartRadio, as well as on my website, ChristinaMarlette.com. If you would like to be a guest and share your story of courage, especially if there's some voice in your mind saying, no, I could never do that, please apply. It is a way to even expand your comfort zone by being a guest on the podcast. So you can go to ChristinaMarlette.com and make your application, just like Zaheen did. Thanks again, Zaheen.
Thank you.
All right. I look forward to connecting with you again on the show next time. Bye-bye for now.